Welcome everybody to part 2 of our tips and tricks video, which will also be the last part in our Bushcraft for Beginners series. Fear not, for we will be continuing the Bushcraft for Beginners series in a community along with Appy Mountain Trekkers, Beat Around the Bushcraft Caywood, Harris Outdoors, and Grim Raven. So there's still a lot of good content to come, focused directly at the beginner. Tip number 1. For me, it is very important to always carry something like a shmog with you. This can be used for a variety of different applications. One of which that I often use it for is covering my head and face should I forget a toque or choose not to bring one and the weather turns adverse. These are a very handy piece of kit that can be used in almost every application you can think of, from carrying stuff, keeping your pack and your kit organized, covering up your face and your head, as well as holding fine materials that you might find out in the wilderness, such as mushrooms, tinder, and berries. One of my favorite uses for a shmog is to lay it down when lighting friction fire or playing with dry tinder in general in conditions where I don't want it to get wet. Tip number 2. Hot rocks. If you do choose to bring a shmog with you out into the wilderness, another great use for it is to hold your hot rocks. You throw these in the fire till they're just hot enough that you can only hold them for about 3 seconds before you have to change position in your hands. That's ideally how warm you want your hot rocks to be. Wrap them in your shmog and throw them in your sleeping bag to bring up the ambient temperature. Tip number 3. Like the hot rocks, a hot water bottle can be used in the same sort of manner and is more widely available, as most people bring a stainless steel water bottle with them out into the woods. So when rocks aren't available, you can heat up water in the same capacity that you do the rocks, put a lid on it, wrap it in your shmog, and throw it inside your sleeping bag to bring up the ambient temperature. Tip number 4. Much like a shmog, a bandana is a useful implement to have when out in the woods. I choose to use 100% cotton bandanas, as in a pinch they can be cut down and used to make char cloth. Char cloth is also a very excellent item to have when you're out and about. It can work for a variety of applications, even something as simple as a coffee filter. Tip number 5. Don't pack it, craft it. You can make everything from sawhorses, chairs, a variety of containers, even a kitchen table if you put your mind to it. The heart of bushcraft is knowing what to use around you to make the items that you need and are necessary to survive and thrive out in the wilderness. Next time you're out and about, give it a try. Tip number 6. Make your first fire your last fire by implementing charwood. As soon as you have a fire going for the first time, ensure that you collect some of the coals or process some charwood. This will always help to ensure that you are able to get a fire going even in the most adverse conditions. Tip number 7. As a simple rule in the boreal forest, once you have gathered firewood and you feel that you have enough, gather 5 times more. This should be enough to get you through the long, cold Canadian winter nights. Tip number 8. When out in the woods, it's important to know a few knots. This one you can see is a marlin spike hitch. This is useful when you're doing things like toggle handles or making things like a bushcraft ladder. It is a very useful knot that can be used to make other knots quite readily. Here you'll see I'm making a bowline using a marlin spike hitch, bringing the tail through and back to itself to create the bowline knot. A bowline is a very useful knot for bushcraft. Here we're making a clove hitch, which is another great knot when you go to secure something. All you do is form an X and slide the tail underneath each part of the X. With the clove hitch, you can also use other hitches such as a half hitch to lift longer objects to heights securely without worry of them falling. Sometimes we need to make a loop. A great knot to know for doing this is a fisherman's knot, which is basically tying two overhand knots over opposite ends of the same piece of cord and pulling it tight together. This will noose tight and allow you to make a loop. Once you have a loop, that opens up other knots, such as a lark's head. Another common knot is the figure 8 knot. Here I show you with a single cord how to tie the figure 8 knot. Once you've mastered tying it with the single cord, double them up and tie the same knot, and this will give you a loop knot much like the bowline, only a little bit different. When it comes to knots, you don't need to learn lots, but you need to know how to tie a few very well. Tip number 9. Be prepared. Different seasons bring about a whole different type of challenge and a whole different set of gear. Make sure to take the time to note what could possibly happen during your stay out there and pack gear accordingly for it. The final tip is probably the most important, though I don't have any video of this actual particular tip. Believe me, it is a lifesaver and probably the best camping hack ever made. This is, bring an empty bottle with you, so in the middle of the night when you need to take a tinkle, you don't need to leave your sleeping bag. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. I hope you enjoyed this series. Lots more to come with the Bushcraft Community Coalition. I hope you guys enjoy it.